Part 1: The Billionaire's Awakening. It was a cold morning in Manhattan when Jonathan Fields, a self-made billionaire, stared out from the floor-to-ceiling windows of his skyscraper office. The city below pulsed with life, yet he felt a quiet emptiness that no amount of wealth could fill. His empire spanned industries from tech startups to real estate, but despite his success, there was a gnawing void he couldn't ignore. Success, Jonathan realized, was not measured by money alone. He had built walls of steel and glass around his heart, believing that control and ambition would bring happiness. Yet every board meeting, every negotiation, every award felt hollow. Something essential was missing. It was on this morning that a chance encounter changed everything. While attending a charity gala, he met Emily, the daughter of a humble community leader who ran local youth programs. Emily was bright, kind, and unassuming qualities Jonathan had long forgotten existed in his pursuit of success. She didn't see him as a billionaire or a powerful man. She saw him as a person, capable of change, capable of purpose. Jonathan was struck not by attraction, but by a sudden clarity. He realized that true fulfillment came from using his influence to make a difference, not just accumulating wealth. Emily's life, devoted to serving others, illuminated the path he had ignored for so long. Over the following weeks, Jonathan began volunteering in the community programs Emily led. At first, he struggled with humility. Accustomed to being in control, taking instructions felt foreign. But as he interacted with children, listened to their stories, and contributed in small, meaningful ways, he discovered a new kind of power, the power to inspire, to nurture, and to lift others. He also faced resistance from himself and from those around him. Board members questioned his involvement in charity work instead of profit-making. Friends mocked his shift in priorities. Yet Jonathan persisted, motivated by a vision larger than his own comfort. With each small victory helping a struggling teen get into college, funding a mentorship program, creating scholarships, Jonathan felt a sense of accomplishment deeper than any business deal could offer. One evening, while reflecting on his journey, Jonathan understood a profound truth. Wealth is a tool, not a destination. True success is measured not by what you accumulate, but by what you give, by the positive impact you leave behind. And so began a transformational billionaire awakening to the real meaning of life. He realized that relationships, values, and service mattered more than titles or possessions. And Emily, whose vision had inspired this awakening, became a guide, not just for him, but for the countless others who would later benefit from their combined efforts. Jonathan's journey was far from over. The road ahead would challenge him in ways money never could, tests of patience, empathy, and moral courage. But for the first time he felt ready to become the man he was meant to be, not just for himself, but for the world. This was only the beginning. The story of transformation, of real impact, of finding purpose beyond wealth, had just begun. The transformation Jonathan had embarked upon was not easy. What looked from the outside like a simple shift from boardroom deals to community service was, in reality, a battle against a lifetime of habits, fears, and expectations. The walls he had built around himself for decades did not crumble overnight. In fact, they often seemed stronger than ever. Every morning, he arrived at the youth center, expecting gratitude and admiration, only to encounter skepticism. Volunteers questioned his motives. Some parents were wary of a billionaire suddenly showing up in their children's lives. "Why is he here?" they whispered. "What does he want?" Jonathan felt the weight of judgment pressing down on him, but he remembered Emily's words from that first night at the gala. "If you want to make a difference, do it quietly. Let your actions speak louder than your name." And so, Jonathan set aside his ego. He scrubbed floors, organized books, and helped with tutoring sessions. Each small act, though unnoticed by most, was a lesson in humility. He discovered the profound satisfaction in listening, truly listening to others. A teenager struggling with math, a single mother worried about her child's future, a young volunteer doubting her abilities. Jonathan learned that every story mattered. Every person was a world unto themselves. But his internal battle was even more intense. For the first time, he confronted the emptiness that wealth could not fill. Nights were the hardest. In the silence of his penthouse, surrounded by luxury, He wrestled with questions that had no easy answers. Who am I beyond my money? What legacy am I truly leaving behind? During this period, he faced his first real test. A local program he had funded, the scholarship initiative for underprivileged teens, was threatened by bureaucracy. Papers were lost, funds delayed, and some of the students might not get the support they desperately needed. Jonathan could have called in favors, used his connections, or leveraged his influence to fix the problem immediately. But Emily reminded him, sometimes the real lesson is patience. Let the process teach you how to navigate without shortcuts. And so, Jonathan learned to wait, to advocate with integrity, and to empower others to take responsibility alongside him. He met with city officials, wrote letters, attended long meetings not to assert his power, but to ensure fairness and transparency. He discovered that true influence was not about domination, but about facilitation. The lessons he learned extended beyond leadership. Jonathan began to notice the patterns in his own life that had led to isolation, constant ambition without reflection, relationships treated as transactions, moments of joy postponed for future gain. He began to meditate, journal, and reflect on his daily interactions. Slowly, he understood that change required consistency, not occasional effort. Small acts of kindness, repeated over time, build character. Small decisions to listen, to mentor, and to support others accumulate into a life of impact. In this period, he also faced personal temptation, the lure of old habits. Some former business partners invited him to a high-stakes deal promising immense profit. It was everything he had once lived for. But he declined, realizing that chasing money alone would undo the growth he had worked so hard to achieve. The decision was not easy. He had to redefine success on his own terms, learning that courage is often quiet and invisible to the world. Meanwhile, his relationship with Emily deepened, not romantically, but as a mentor-mentee partnership. Emily's unwavering dedication reminded him that motivation alone is not enough. Discipline, empathy, and resilience are equally essential. Through her guidance, Jonathan realized that empowerment of others is the ultimate test of leadership. If he could lift others while maintaining his own integrity, he would achieve something far greater than personal wealth. By the end of this phase, Jonathan had transformed from a man chasing empty victories to one pursuing meaningful impact. The community now saw him not as a billionaire, but as a catalyst for change. Students wrote letters of gratitude, volunteers looked up to him, and even skeptics began to acknowledge the sincerity of his efforts. Yet, Jonathan knew this was only the beginning. Life had bigger challenges in store, ones that would test not just his wealth or skills, but his character, patience, and moral courage. For true transformation, he realized, is never linear, is a constant battle between the person we are and the person we aspire to become. As he walked home one evening, past the city lights and the hum of life, Jonathan felt a quiet sense of purpose. He was no longer a man defined by possessions or titles. He was defined by impact. And the journey ahead, though uncertain and fraught with trials, was now one he embraced fully with courage, humility, and hope. Jonathan's journey had reached a point where his daily routine was no longer defined by boardrooms, contracts, or numbers on a balance sheet. Instead, it revolved around mentorship, problem-solving, and the small but profound victories of helping others realize their potential. But as he quickly discovered, transforming a life on a community was never simple. One morning, as he walked into the youth center, he noticed tension among the volunteers. A disagreement had erupted over the direction of the upcoming scholarship program. Some wanted to focus solely on academics, others on arts and sports. Jonathan could have imposed his solution, using the authority he had spent decades accumulating. Instead, he paused, listened, and asked questions. What's important here? He asked, not what I think, but what the students truly need. Hours were spent in discussion, brainstorming, and planning. Jonathan realized that leadership was not about giving orders, it was about facilitating collaboration. Each volunteer brought unique insight, and by valuing their voices, he created a stronger, more resilient program. The lesson was clear. Influence is magnified not by authority, but by empowering others. But his challenges extended beyond interpersonal dynamics. One student, a quiet boy named Malik, was on the verge of dropping out of school. His family struggled financially, and he felt invisible in a world dominated by larger problems. Jonathan spent hours mentoring him, helping with college applications, and even connecting his family with essential resources. Watching Malik's confidence grow reminded Jonathan that true leadership is often unseen, measured not by accolades but by the lives touched quietly and profoundly. Even within his personal life, Jonathan faced trials. His former business associates often tried to lure him back to his old ways, tempting him with high-risk, high-reward ventures that promised immediate recognition. It was easy to fall into the familiar rhythm of greed and ambition, but he resisted. He understood now that success without meaning is hollow. The most valuable victories are those that leave a lasting positive impact on others. Through these experiences, Jonathan developed an unshakable mantra: purpose over profit, people over prestige. This principle guided every decision, every interaction, and every initiative he undertook. The mantra was simple, but its application was anything but. Each day demanded patience, empathy, and resilience. Some days, it felt like progress was invisible, like planting seeds in barren soil. Yet he reminded himself that growth takes time, and even the smallest efforts can lead to remarkable results. Meanwhile, Emily continued to guide him, not as a teacher of wealth, but as a teacher of life. She shared stories of resilience, sacrifice, and hope from her community, reminding Jonathan that every person has the power to shape the future if only they choose courage over fear, action over apathy. Jonathan learned to embrace discomfort as a catalyst for growth. Every challenge, every setback, was a lesson in disguise. One pivotal moment came when the youth center faced potential closure due to funding shortages. Jonathan was tempted to throw his weight and money at the problem, but Emily insisted on a different approach. "Let's involve the community," she said. "Let's show that we can overcome obstacles together." Jonathan organized a citywide fundraiser, not just relying on his wealth, but mobilizing volunteers, students, local businesses, and even other philanthropists. The event was a resounding success, not because of the money raised, but because it demonstrated the power of collaboration, vision, and collective effort. It was a testament to Jonathan's transformation. He had become a leader who inspired action, nurtured talent, and cultivated hope. But, as the months passed, Jonathan saw his own growth mirrored in the lives around him. Students gained confidence, volunteers felt valued, and the community began to flourish. Yet, he understood that this was not the end of his journey. Life would continue to present challenges, unexpected crises, personal doubts, and ethical dilemmas. But for the first time, he felt equipped to face them, not with fear or control, but with wisdom, empathy, and perseverance. Through it all, Jonathan learned the ultimate truth: wealth and influence are meaningless without purpose and integrity. The billionaire who once sought satisfaction through material gain had discovered that true fulfillment comes from contributing to the world in a meaningful way, from lifting others as you rise, and from leaving a legacy defined by character, not currency. And so, Jonathan's journey continued not as a man chasing recognition, but as one quietly, consistently, and powerfully transforming lives. Each challenge was a stepping stone, each setback a lesson, and each small victory a testament to the strength of the human spirit. In the quiet moments, when he reflected on his past life, Jonathan no longer felt regret or longing. Instead, he felt gratitude for the struggles that shaped him, for the mentors who guided him, and for the opportunity to make a real difference. Because true success, he realized, is not measured in wealth, titles, or power. It is measured in the courage to change, the persistence to grow, and the wisdom to use your gifts to illuminate the lives of others. By now, Jonathan's journey had become a testament to the power of persistence, empathy, and vision. Yet the universe, it seemed, had reserved his greatest challenges for the moments when he least expected them. True transformation he realized, was tested not in comfort, but in the crucible of adversity. One morning, a devastating report shook the youth center to its core. A natural disaster flood had damaged large portions of the facility. Classrooms were destroyed, supplies ruined, and many students were left without a safe place to learn. Jonathan felt a pang of despair. Every plan he had made, every effort he had poured into the center seemed to be under threat. For the first time, he confronted the terrifying reality that success could be fleeting, that even good intentions could be tested by forces beyond one's control. But Jonathan had changed. He no longer reacted with panic or frustration. Instead, he gathered his team, volunteers, and community leaders. "We will rebuild," he said calmly. "Not just the building, but the hope it represents." His words carried weight not because of his wealth, but because of his credibility, earned through months of consistent action, empathy, and integrity. The rebuilding process was grueling. Days stretched into nights as Jonathan coordinated repairs, fundraisers, and volunteer efforts. He experienced exhaustion, doubt, and moments of fear, but he also discovered the depth of human resilience. Students who had once been timid now organized relief efforts, volunteers took initiative, and even local businesses contributed resources. Jonathan realized that true leadership is not about doing everything yourself, if it is about inspiring others to rise and act together. During this period, he also faced a personal challenge that shook him to his core. An old business partner, sensing his absence from the corporate world, attempted a hostile takeover of one of his companies. The betrayal hurt deeply, tempting Jonathan to retreat into the old patterns of aggression, manipulation, and control. But he remembered the lessons he had learned. Integrity is stronger than expediency. Compassion is stronger than vengeance. Purpose is stronger than profit. Rather than retaliate. Jonathan approached the situation with fairness, transparency, and strategic patience. He negotiated in good faith, prioritized the well-being of employees, and protected the company's values. In doing so, he discovered a profound truth. Ethical courage is often more difficult than financial risk, but far more rewarding in the long term. Amid these trials, Jonathan's relationship with Emily continued to be a source of guidance and inspiration. She reminded him that true change requires consistent reflection and learning. One evening, as they walked through the newly rebuilt center, she said, "You've learned how to lead. Now, it's time to empower others to lead with you." Jonathan embraced the challenge. He began creating mentorship programs within the center, training older students and volunteers to take ownership of initiatives. He understood that sustainability of impact depends on creating leaders, not followers. By investing in the growth of others, he multiplied his influence exponentially. The community began to recognize Jonathan not as a billionaire who gave money, but as a man who embodied hope, resilience, and transformation. Letters poured in from students and parents, expressing gratitude for his commitment, leadership, and humanity. But Jonathan knew that the ultimate reward was not recognition, it was seeing others rise, achieve their potential, and carry forward the values he had embraced. Through these trials, he internalized the most important lesson of all: adversity is the greatest teacher. Challenges, losses, and setbacks reveal character, ignite resilience, and provide opportunities to inspire and lead. The journey is never smooth, but every obstacle is a chance to refine one's purpose and reaffirm one's commitment to meaningful impact. By the end of this chapter in his life, Jonathan had not only rebuilt the youth center, but he had also rebuilt himself. He emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than ever before. His wealth, once a source of emptiness, had become a tool for transformation. His influence, once used to control, was now a force for empowerment. And his life, once measured by titles and achievements, was now measured by the legacy of positive change he was creating. Jonathan realized that true leadership is not about avoiding hardship, it is about confronting it with courage, guiding others through it with empathy, and emerging from it with greater purpose. And as he looked toward the future, he knew that greater challenges awaited, but he felt ready, For he had discovered the profound truth: the measure of a life is not in what you take, but in what you give, nurture, and inspire.